Webcasting from Southeast Kansas, I'm Jonathan Switzer, and this is the Roboblog Chronicles. This week's topic is the vast array of characters still bouncing around the Robotech universe who weren't in Robotech the Shadow Chronicles, but who, for one reason or another, may well be in its sequel. We'll start off with good old Lisa Hayes. Now, the only way we're going to see her again is if we actually get to see aboard the SDF-3 in the sequel, which I'm really hoping that we do, given the massive tease that the SDF-3 scenes were in the first Shadow Chronicles feature, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Lisa, for those who don't know, was actually standing right next to Rick the whole time on the bridge of the SDF-3. This is established in Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles issue number 5. She was wearing those sort of ambassadorial robes that were in the image I just flashed up for you, because she resigned from the RAF and was going to be taking on a sort of ambassadorial role back on Tyrol, but no, she was on the SDF-3, so she never got there. It's kind of frustrating that she was, because she could be taking on a much greater, much more interesting role on Tyrol right now in the sequel, but that's just the way the story went. Jack Baker, the intended young, brash hero character from Robotech 2 The Sentinels, established in Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles as the Wolf Squadron leader before Daryl Taylor, the late Daryl Taylor, who died in a most unpleasant and messy way in Robotech the Shadow Chronicles. Basically, all Jack would bring to the table is a certain amount of name recognition with those of us who followed the Sentinels, and another warm body to pilot a Veritech fighter. But on the other hand, the Expeditionary Force needs fighter pilots, needs good commanders, especially in the wake of the destruction of Space Station Liberty and its fleet and the devastating losses incurred over Earth. So, you know, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't use Jack Baker. He's there, they've established him, and you know, he's a good, solid character. And if you're bringing back Jack, why not bring back Karen Penn, his rival and love interest from Robotech 2 The Sentinels. She was last seen on Space Station Liberty. She would probably have been evacuated to the Archangel, and it could set up a nice little scene there. Jack was last established as being on Tyrol, dropping off Lin Min May. Probably didn't make it back to Space Station Liberty, probably hung around on Tyrol doing whatever it is going on Tyrol right now. You know, you have Karen, after being evacuated to the Archangel, dropped off on Tyrol, have the two meet up again. That would nicely set up their relationship again, and if there's one thing that the next movie really needs to do a good job of, it's setting up all of these complex, interlocking relationships between all of these characters. So that when stuff happens to them, we care. Personally, I would put Karen back into an Alpha Fighter. I wouldn't mind it if she returned to her role in the Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles comic series of being Vince Grant's first officer of sorts, but I think she's better as a fighter pilot. I think it's more interesting to have her and Jack constantly butting heads. You know, they're older, they're more mature, they could do it in more of a friendly way than the rather antagonistic way they did in Sentinels, but I think that is a much better dynamic for them. Alright, moving along. Rem and Cabell. Ignore Cabell. He's old. He's, you know, just there because he seems to just, you know, follow Rem wherever he goes. But Rem is the interesting one here. Rem was re-established rather, in Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles as being a clone of Zor. By his dialogue with Dana Sterling. "Have I met you before? In another lifetime," she says rather cheesily, but it does the job it's setting out to do. It establishes who Rem is, for those who are paying attention. The Robotech Expeditionary Force does not have a protoculture matrix right now. Their last protoculture matrix was aboard the SDF-3. Who probably created that protoculture matrix? Probably Rem, I would imagine. Who can make them a new protoculture matrix? Rem. That would help to alleviate or even possibly end their big protoculture energy problem. And it is not just a problem for the Expeditionary Force at this point. Remember, in Robotech New Generation, it's pretty well established that most of the Earth is running on protoculture right now. So this is going to be a major problem for the Expeditionary Force, and Rem can solve it. The Sentinels! We know what that guy's up to. He's a Haydenite. He's with all the other Haydenites, being a bad guy of sorts. It's Vet. He could only be he might only be a bad guy of sorts. The only other Sentinels character who was named by name in Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles was Laron from Carbera, big bear guy. And that was because the Carberans are shipbuilders, and the Expeditionary Force needed ships, and the Expeditionary Force, in the wake of all that stuff I mentioned before, probably needs more ships. We might see him again, we might see him named again. The rest of the Sentinels, they'll probably just be hanging around for, you know, alien color. Unless the plot directly involves them, in which case you might see the ambassador from whatever world gets deeply involved in the plot becoming a major figure. Alright. Dana Sterling. Dana is brought back into the fold in the last issue of Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles in a sort of cameo walk-on thing. She has her little dialogue with Rem. She walks past Maya with this look of, you know, we're not talking. And honestly, it's a baffling scene, but the one thing it does establish is that Dana Sterling is out there in space. She was aboard Space Station Liberty, and they're planning on doing something with her. What are they planning to do with her? Well, I've got a few ideas. For instance, one character that Prelude to the Shadow Chronicles brings along is Dr. Laszlo Zand from the Robotech novels. Dr. Zand helped T.R. Edwards develop, or redevelop, shadow technology. Who helped us with the shadow technology, or I mean the RAF in the Shadow Chronicles? The Haydenites, who are now the Expeditionary Force's enemies. Who, out of everyone, could potentially devise something to use against the Haydenites, or de-booby-trap the shadow technology, or refine the shadow technology so the Haydenites can't do anything about it? It's Dr. Zand, who has a relationship of sorts with Dr. Zand. Dana Sterling. You know, you could bring her along to sort of have a whole Hannibal Lecter, Clarice Starling thing with you know, Dr. Zand. And who better to talk to Dana about her problems with Zand and, you know, just sort of serve as a sounding board than Angelo Dante. Well, you might say Bowie Grant, but Bowie's kind of boring. And the thing about Angelo is Dana had to work hard to earn Angelo's respect. That makes their relationship a little more complicated and a little more interesting. And beyond that, the Dana-Bowie dynamic is more brother-sister. And honestly, I think it would be more interesting to have somebody who could potentially serve as, you know, possibly a romantic interest. I've always thought, you know, Dana and Angelo, that would be a pretty good mix. A pretty good pairing. I think that's about all the time I have right now. I've got 2 more characters to go. We'll get to them midweek. So that's Captain JLS signing off. It's very important.